Hey everybody, welcome to Camel City Chat. I'm John McPherson, and I am here with my longtime friend, although he probably won't admit it, Cameron Kent, who I've just found out doesn't remember the first time we met, and I will be pouting the rest of this episode. How
It
are
was
you, man?
40 years ago.
You are close.
Yeah.
You're real close.
Yeah.
You're not going to believe. I think you'll, when I tell you where it was, you'll. Let's get to this, okay? First of all, I want to know where you're from and how long you've been here, because then we'll tie in how we met, okay?
All right.
So where are you from and how long you been here?
I'm originally from Alexandria, Virginia, and I moved here in 1975 to go to Wake Forest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 1975 to go to Wake Forest. You graduated in 79?
Yes,
Wow. Tangerine Bowl.
exactly. Well, the Tangerine Bowl would have been the next
That's
season.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, when they played LSU.
So there is a friend of mine that was on that team. And of course, you know Chuck Kraft over at Ronald McDonald House, I think, was on that team.
Yeah, yeah.
Rob Brissell. But Landon King was the free safety who intercepted against Carolina that year with a broken hand.
All right.
When they went to the Tangerine Bowl. We went to the Tangerine Bowl. My parents took me down there, first time to go to Disney and all that kind of stuff. It was great. What a great school. Do you go back to games now and stuff like that?
Oh, I do. Season ticket holder.
Mm-hmm.
I've had season tickets for 26 years. Yeah, same seats. Yeah. Big Deacon fan,
Yep.
which is...
So, when did you start at Channel 12?
I started there August 20th, 1979. I graduated in May, went home for a couple of months, worked, and then started interviewing for jobs,
Right.
and got the job and started there August 20th. Never
You remember
forget
Henry
it.
Hunt?
Oh, very well.
Yep. I'm
Very
friends
well.
with his kids.
He was the chief engineer.
Yep,
Yes.
yep. So Cliff's in mortgage, Alpha Mortgage,
Mm-hmm.
and then I always kiddingly tell people when they work with Cliff, I'll say ask him about playing D&D. I mean, I used to go over there and spend the night with them, and him and Ray, and play D&D in the basement or whatever. But here's when we met. In 1982, you came to Bishop McGuinness to watch them play practice soccer, and I was there trying out for the team. And I met you on the hill behind the Kentucky Fried Chicken was right here.
This is the old Bishop McGuinness.
This is the old Bishop McGuinness.
Right.
Yeah. Every school I've gone to is either burned down or changed. This is kind of scary. But the old Bishop McGuinness, so you go, we'd go get a drink at the Kentucky Fried Chicken, walk back over to practice and I met you on that hill. And the only reason why I know that is because I suck so bad at soccer that I could at least talk to you and go, oh, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so, so-and-so. And that's when I first met you. And, of course, I was, what's your first year of high school? You're 13, 14. And that's when I'd met you. Yeah.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, that long ago. And then, of course, I go into KNS News, and we had running into through there. The JCs, I met you because you served as an MC for different things. And then... this is the second time I've interviewed you. The first time was when you wrote Make Me Disappear.
Oh, I remember that.
And I interviewed you on WSJS for Book Talk.
I remember
and we
that,
had
yeah.
you, and I don't know if it was Glenn, Andy, or Chris Ampar at that point. But yeah, so that's kind of weird.
Well, we have been friends for, it's about 40 years.
Oh, it's 1982, so
Yeah.
it's next year.
How about that?
Yeah, wow. This is crazy.
I'm a
So,
lucky man.
no. I think that you just got some more sympathy votes on some card. So you've been in journalism since 79, basically?
Since 79 professionally, before that, I started when I was really a freshman in high school,
Right.
writing for school papers and then internships in the summer for local newspapers in Alexandria and all news radio station and things like that. So.
And then
kinda
when did you
always done
retire
it.
from WXII?
I retired in January of 2017.
Do you miss it?
I do miss certain parts of it. I miss covering big stories. Election night, I always loved that. I love going out in the field and the travel that was involved. I miss the people quite a bit because
You worked with some really cool people.
I worked with great people. I worked with great people and worked for great people. And so, that part, that daily interaction I miss. And I still keep up with a lot of those folks. Some I talk to every day.
Right.
Sometimes about news and sometimes just about life.
Shooting it. Yeah.
But you are in the trenches and you're under a lot of pressure most of the day, and you're surrounded by these people who just support you and lift you up and are part of your team, and you just make these family type connections that will never go away.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that. I got to get you 2 more questions out of you, and then we'll go to the good stuff, which is what people want to hear about you. And all right, so what's your favorite place to eat in Winston?
Oh boy, it's a long list because we have so many great
You can
restaurants.
say all of them if you want to.
Well, I can't think of any that I don't like. I go to River Birch Lodge quite a bit. Oh my goodness, I love Moselle's. I love the Porch.
Yeah.
Man,
Good places.
Hard to narrow it down.
Yeah, good places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any place that serves barbecue.
So last week, when the theme was tomatoes, so it was like she wanted to go to Moselle. She liked the tomato there, and then the tomato pie, and then Curate, the wine place. They had like and they had posted a picture of a tomato thing there. So, but you've named just like really good.
And I
places.
need to mention Ryan's Restaurant because it has been just upper class for a long time, and special occasions. Go to Ryan's.
Dennis is the bomb.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always takes
Great
care
place.
of you. Yeah.
All right. So the next question is, what do you like to do around Winston? Because I know you also like to do some other things, and we'll talk about those. So what do you?
Oh golly, Winston has so much to offer, and I tell people who move here, you're never ever going to be looking for something to do. I love live music, and they've just got a thriving music scene. There's so many different venues now that have outdoor music, which has been great. Life-saving during COVID because you can sit out on a patio and listen to live music and you feel safe. So I think that's one of my favorite things to do. The theater here is fantastic, especially the little theaters, Theater Alliance and places like that. I'm an avid golfer, so you can't throw a rock without hitting a golf course around here.
Yeah.
So.
And so you've been married. It's kind of interesting because we talk about different things. You're my second guest that goes to bed with a realtor. So Richard Burr said that. He goes, I keep up with realtors. I go to bed with a realtor. But your wife Sue is a very good agent. And how long have you guys been married?
31 years.
31 years. You have 2 kids?
2 kids, yeah.
And what are they doing now?
My son, Colin, is 29, and he's an aerospace engineer. He works for Northrop Grumman up in Arlington, Virginia.
Okay.
My daughter, Lauren, is almost 27, and she works for CNN in their London bureau. So she's following in Dad's footsteps.
So you've said about 5 different things where it's like when you said CNN London bureau, Doug High. I'm sure you remember Alan and Doug High, and then their dad, who was the writer for the Bruce that wrote about wine. All right, so Doug works for CNN, and in fact, I think he was just in France, but he does a lot of their political stuff. And then you've said a couple other names earlier that, I'd be remiss if I didn't say Austin Cavanis, but I'm sure you've worked with Austin.
I have.
And get him to tell you a story about me teaching his college class sometime. It's another one of those stupid ones like earlier that I told you. But the people that you've worked with have really, as you said, made your career even more fun.
Well, I had great partners over the years. Wanda Stark and I sat next to each other for over 20 years.
She's a bomb.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
Laney Pope's great. All the sports guys, always enjoyed them. And you get especially close to the photographers because that's who you spend the most time with. And when you're out, covering a hurricane or a forest fire or something like that, you're with the photographer. That's your partner. That's your teammate. So I've stayed really close to all those guys.
Well, and it's interesting that you said the big story because you were nominated for for 14 Emmys, but the one that you won, I think, makes up for any nomination because it was such a powerful thing. You covered the Pentagon after 9/11 and won an Emmy for that.
I did.
What's that like?
Well, it was probably the favorite story I did out of the 20,000 stories that I did because the plane hit the Pentagon. I grew up in Alexandria. My father worked at the Pentagon for over 20 years. And my mother worked in the Pentagon when she was a young woman, and that's where they met.
Okay.
And so, that building has been a big part of our family. And so right after 9/11, I went up there and I actually took my parents, down to the site and interviewed them about, what did this represent to you? What did the people inside that building represent to you? And it was really emotional. And my parents did a great job. They gave me great interviews and put that all together and won an Emmy for it.
Yeah.
And I like that story more than any I've ever done.
I figured you were going to say that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's very powerful because it was not only familiar, but it was your heart. And that's your parents, and you grew up in that building.
Right.
Yeah.
Had a lot invested in it.
Yeah. So I asked you if you missed it, and one of the things that was always cool is you were that voice that we heard at 6 o'clock. And what I mean by that is now you log on. You got Robin whatever in the morning on CNN. If you watch headline news, I don't know if she's still Robin Meade. I don't even know if she still does it because I don't really watch the news much anymore. Sorry, but you retired, so I quit. It's kind of like when and you're gonna smack me when I say this, but it's kind of like you were Winston-Salem's Walter Cronkite, and you were the voice of our community. You and Wanda, you were what we turned to at night to find out what was going on. And while it wasn't the TMZ style stuff that we see now of, just trying to get the story or whatever, you guys approached it from every angle. You guys approached it, with caring and, compassion and things like that. And I think that's why you were so successful with what you were doing, is because you're who we trusted. How does that feel to have that burden on your shoulders?
I never felt it was a burden. I always felt it was a responsibility that I gladly accepted. And I grew up watching Walter Cronkite, CBS Evening News, and that's the way it is. And so he has always been sort of my gold standard.
So I did good on that comparison,
Well,
right?
I wish I compared to Walter Cronkite.
Hey, I said it.
But he is somebody that, I tried to emulate for two reasons. First of all, I felt like he just told me what he actually thought happened that day. Didn't put any spin on it, no interjection of personal biases. Like, this is what I think are the facts, and that's what I tried to do. This is what I actually think happened today. I'm going to let you decide what you think about that. So that's one thing. And then I just always admired how calm he was. You saw him get emotional, like when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. That's a moment that's burned in a lot of people's memory of him delivering that news. But I always wanted to remain calm even when there were, bad things going on. During 9/11 or some of those other stories, I just wanted
You had
to...
Challenger?
Yeah.
I was in the lunchroom at McGinnis when that happened. You had Challenger. You had 9/11. What other
Columbine was one that affected me. I think anybody who has kids who go to school,
right?
That was the first major school shooting, and I think that rattled a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. And I remember seeing those videos of the guys walking down the hallways with the trench coats on. It just was powerful. What you had the Wall, didn't you?
Yeah, Berlin Wall.
Right.
Yeah, and
Reagan shot.
Tom Brokaw was there for that, covering it for NBC. He's another role model of mine. Same thing, just the facts, and I'm going to remain calm, and that's what I tried to do, during my whole career.
Yeah, you had Reagan shot.
Yeah.
All these things happened during your career.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And
Katrina, went down to New Orleans for that.
Yeah, I just we all have jobs and we all do things. Like I'm a realtor. I can fill out the paperwork. I have situations come up, but to sit and try and tell, and I deliver bad news. And that's it. But I don't deliver that kind of bad news. And so you said you had different role models. How do you prepare? Because I've been in the studio. I know what. Basically, you're walking out of just finishing and doing your own makeup because it is, and pulling the stuff off and sitting down in the chair, and they hand you the teleprompter. How do you prepare for that?
Well, that's the key word, preparation. And it doesn't start when you walk in the office. It starts the minute you wake up in the morning. You turn on the news to see what happened overnight, read the local paper. When you go into the office, you read the wire reports, international, national, local. Keep up with the weather, keep up with business, keep up with sports, all those kinds of things, so that when the light goes on at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., you're not. It's not new information to you. You better understand the story you're talking about, the context, so that you can decide how important is this. What I'm telling people, is this really important, or is this trivial? Pronounce the names and places and know all the players and all those kinds of things. So there's a ton of behind the scenes preparation so that when you go on the air, you're successful, because you're winging it. A lot of times you are just winging it. You don't have any script. You just need to know. So you need to know the history of your city. I remember when the huge fire burned the warehouses downtown Winston-Salem. It was the biggest fire we've ever had.
Right, over near the new jail.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I knew a lot about those buildings because I'd been in those buildings. And so, you go on the air and you can talk about the construction and the history and all those things, and it all comes down to preparation.
Well, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to start to talk about the history of Winston-Salem, some of the stories you covered here, because there were a lot that you covered here that were big stories for us here. And then I want to get into some about you and some other stuff, if that's cool. All
Great.
right. We'll be right back with more Camel City Chat. Welcome back to Camel City Chat. I'm John McPherson, and of course here with our guest, Cameron Kent, former news anchor of WXII, author, lecturer, DD, PhD. No, but yeah, we'll get to the author stuff. You make me mad every time I see that you've written another book. I'd like to write more than one sentence, so we want to talk about that. But so just because you don't know it, I just showed the picture of you. Was that like your first day? So Stabler, I need to give you that. Was that like your first day that I showed you?
It's close. That was probably 1979.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was a sweet hairdo, man.
Prince Valiant haircut.
Yeah.
I think I was cutting my own hair at the time.
I will show you one of my old ones that you can then make fun of me back for too. Yours was fine compared to mine. But so. Did you start at sports? Is that what you started with?
No, I started as a street reporter. Okay. I was doing the 11 o'clock news, and I was the night beat reporter. I was the guy who went out on the fires and the wrecks and the shootings and all those kinds of things. And then, so I did that 5 days a week, and then I was the Saturday news anchor from 6 to 11.
And that's how they train you, right? Basically,
right. And sort of break in on the weekends.
Right.
Yeah. And I can remember the very first night I was on, and granted, I looked very young. I was 21, and I looked like I was 16. And I get back to my desk. It's 11:30, and the phone rings, and I pick it up, and this lady goes, "Young man, does your mother know you're up this late?"
Nobody's up this late but the devil. Yep, right?
I was like, yeah, I'm allowed to be up this late.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
Well, you've always looked young. So, I mean, even now, I don't think any of our audience would be able to guess what your age was without doing a Wikipedia search. So.
Good clean living, John.
Yeah, good clean living. Yeah, you go with that. Yeah, being the son of a general. Yeah, that's good.
That helped.
Yeah. So you have been in the seat when we've had some serious things happen in Winston-Salem. You said the fire down at off Church Street?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Church Street.
Down around Church Street first.
Jeff Smith with Smitty's notes. He's like, I live next door to that. I mean, and all that stuff. But you got Deborah Sykes. Mm-hmm. Was that when you were in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got Jill Marker.
Yes.
Right, and then we have
covered both those stories extensively.
Michael Hayes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Old Salisbury Road.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and those changed our town in a lot of cases. At some point I remember WNRW. Did that happen? That happened when you were at the desk, when they went in over at in Kernersville and shot the general manager.
They did, and our station was involved in that because the same person had come to our station
and missed your
as well.
Right.
And
something was going on because who was the what is that guy's name that was your general manager at that time?
Rennie Corley.
That's it, Rennie. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Renard. And so I knew him because my parents were friends with Rennie and his wife, but something was up and he couldn't come to the meeting. Or no, did he come and meet with him and he met him in the lobby and he didn't, something happened, but Rennie had a brush with him and then he shot the other guy.
Yeah, then he went to the other station and then he was holed up. And my recollection is that he wanted one of our reporters to go on the air issue some statement.
Yeah.
And so our engineers figured out how to put a cable in that only went to a handful of TV sets in the immediate vicinity of that station over in
Right.
Kernersville.
Yeah.
And we broadcast it. He thought it was going out to everybody.
Yeah.
And it was only going out to a couple of houses. And then he surrendered. That's my vague recollection.
Yeah, I
of
remember that
day.
because what they did is they, because a lot of people, if you have a satellite dish in your backyard, which I may have had one at that time, don't realize that they'll feed the commercials down and stuff down at night. So if I remember correctly, they sent a direct feed and they pulled it down off that satellite, and that was able to just get it to that channel on the satellite, but it looked like it was broadcasting everywhere.
Yeah. Fritz Klinner, that story happened while I was there. The Greensboro.
Oh my gosh, that's right. The Greensboro Klan thing happened.
Yeah, that happened. Was there that Saturday in the aftermath, and then I covered that trial for 5 months, and that was really my big break because I was just a regular reporter.
Right.
And they asked for a volunteer because you're going to sit in a courtroom for 5 months, and I'm like, I'll do it.
Right.
Because I'll learn a lot, and I'll be the lead story pretty much every night.
Right.
And so that was a huge break for me.
All right, let's get to some, because I hate to bring the sad things in, but it is, I want people to understand that, it's not, hey, I'm Cameron Kent, and welcome to WXII, and here's what we're talking about tonight. I mean, you are in these stories. They're your life. I mean, you're going home every night after the court, and you may have seen pictures and evidence and things like that to change you. Let's get some positive things. So when you started, you kind of started around the time that NASCAR was really getting jazzed up. So you had some fun playing with NASCAR.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, did you ever do any I Dare Dan stuff with Dan and have any fun with that?
Well,
And Dan Rath, another realtor.
I started off when I was a sportscaster doing something called One-on-One with Cameron Kent,
Right.
where I went out and did sort of the same thing. I mean, this was before Dan. Still have a lot of nagging injuries from those days of really
Gosh, you
foolish things
probably,
that I did.
You're talking. Frank Johnson would have already played at Wake, but now you're talking.
Albus Rogers was the very first one I
Rogers.
did. I played
Yeah.
One-on-One with Albus Rogers,
Yeah.
and then that led to another 100 stories.
And then, of course, I'm sure that Childress took you to town. If you did one with him or Duncan, probably.
Randolph.
At some point. Yeah.
I was in news by then. Thank
Yeah,
goodness.
good,
Yeah.
yeah, good stuff there. No, so I always like to ask this question because I think it's neat for people to hear this. Who's your most favorite interview or most famous interview? Let's start with that.
Oh, probably the biggest interview I ever got was Barack Obama in the White House. That was a big deal.
What? I mean, come on. It's just the president. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and I got to interview a couple other presidents: George W. Bush, George H.W.
Right.
A few others along the way, and those were always notable, but for me, not the most memorable.
Right.
I had other interviews with people who weren't famous that stand out forever in my mind. So
I would assume you interviewed Maya Angelou at some point.
I did, yeah,
Right.
several times. She was always great to me. Yes.
Trying to think of who else would have been around here. It's really funny. We always kid around about what president would you like to hang with. Of course, mine, I would like to meet Harry Truman. I think that would be cool. But if you ask me who I want to go get like a libation with, I want Clinton, Obama, and George W. I think that'd be the funnest night you'd ever have in your entire life.
Yeah.
Because the three of them get along great and, that type of thing. I think but it is interesting. How do you prepare to interview the president? Because first of all, you got to do security clearance and all that stuff, right?
It's not easy to
And
get
then you're
into
in
the
another
White
room
House.
getting mic'd up, and then
Yeah.
you're getting everything checked. and
Yeah,
I have a buddy
exactly.
of mine, actually, that you may know, Chris Wasilowskis. Do you remember Chris?
I do not.
Tall redhead.
Yeah.
He works in lighting and stuff, but they did some shows 2018, 2019, and the president showed up, and it's like, okay, Mr. President, here's what I'm going to do to you. Here's what I'm going to do to you. I would like to hand you the end of the lavalier. Could you please tuck it down through your shirt, and then pass it to, it's like, and he's like doing this,
exactly.
and it's like one hand,
Exactly.
and they're just like this on him, draw down.
Well, what people don't know is that behind the scenes there's, Secret Service guys standing there all around you, so you don't make any sudden moves. And also they tell you on that day, they said, you have a hard 7 minutes with the president. At 7 minutes, interview's over because he's got better things to do or more important things to do. And so
they're not kidding about the hard 7 minutes.
Oh, no, I mean, there's somebody
if
right
he's
behind
answering,
him.
they make him get up and leave.
There's somebody right behind him counting down. So you want to be just very respectful of that. The great thing about that particular interview, though, because I'm not intimidated, but you're certainly aware of where you are, and you don't want to, you don't want to put a wrong foot forward. So we're sitting down, they're miking us up, they're adjusting the lights, and I'm wearing a striped tie. It has navy blue and light blue. And the President of the United States looks at my tie and he goes, what's a Wake Forest man doing wearing a Carolina blue tie? And I'm like, first of all, how'd you know that? I was pretty impressed that you even knew where I went to school. And then I looked down at it and I said, yes, Mr. President, there's some Duke blue in there too. And he goes, yeah, I don't think that works for you. And that little brief interaction, really put me at ease.
Put you at ease.
Yeah, so he was great.
And I like to watch YouTube and read different things and stuff like that. And the gentleman, Remy, I forget what his name is, but he's the villain in the Bond movie. He was talking about how Daniel Craig, just interacting with him being Bond, made him forget lines. He said he's just so good and stuff like that. So, when you're talking about interviewing the president, it's like, how do you, if you've got 7 minutes and you're intimidated a little bit, as you said, but I mean, not really, because this is what you do, and all of a sudden that kicks in, what questions do you ask? 7 minutes, what are the questions?
Well, I wanted to ask him questions that I thought were germane to North Carolina, our military, because we have a huge military presence in this state, jobs, relief from natural disaster, hurricane, things like that. So, I just wanted to ask him not so much political questions, but specific questions about what can you do here in the Oval Office that's going to help the people in Winston-Salem, in North Carolina, Greensboro, High Point. I want to know specifically, what do you have lined up for us?
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's, when we had Burr on, it's like, I'm sure people want me to ask him this or ask him that. I wanted to know about Winston-Salem and North Carolina. And, my favorite part of that interview that we pulled out of it, that you've interviewed him before too, was that he said, we're on the cusp. I mean, with Apple coming, and then now they're talking about Intel maybe coming and different things like this and all these stuff going on. I mean, North Carolina's on the cusp. And them putting an Apple presence in Raleigh-Durham is going to affect us here. I mean, it's wish we had gotten or what. No, it's going to be fine. There'll be people here too. So I asked you earlier, do you have a favorite? I said famous now. Who's your favorite interview? And you're not allowed to use Obama or your parents. I cut you on that parents one because I knew that was coming.
Well, my favorite interviews were with our military veterans. I started off
You are so segueing me right now. That's my next question.
Well, I started off doing this series called Generation of Heroes about World War II veterans. And the first couple guys I interviewed were just fantastic. And it's funny, when I started doing it, a lot of these World War II vets didn't want to talk about it for a couple of reasons. Some of them felt like it was bragging or, boasting.
They don't talk about it.
No, it's like, I went and did my job, I came home, I lived my life. And I was like, well, let me brag about it, And the other part was some of them had memories they didn't really feel like dredging up. But I'm an avid runner, and I run along a stretch of sidewalk every day, and there was a guy out in his yard wearing a Pearl Harbor survivor hat. And I just stopped him and I said, I want to do these stories. Would you mind being my first interview? And he says, let me think about it. John Fulton was his name. He finally agreed to do it. We did this fantastic story because he'd saved all his letters from Pearl Harbor and Iwo Jima and fighting on through the Pacific, 100 nights spent in a foxhole. This guy was tough. And the story was great. And then some of the other World War II vets were like, well, if that's the kind of story you're going to do, then yeah, I'll agree to that. So then I did one with a guy named Jim Swanson, and to this day, the most emotional interview I've ever done, him talking about, being pinned down behind a tree and just machine gun fire, and he was out of bullets, and he starts running toward a hedgerow for safety, and he says, not another shot fired, and by the grace of God. And That story aired on a Thursday night. Sunday morning in church, the minister got up and said, before I preach my sermon, I'd like to know who saw the story on Jim Swanson on WXII Thursday night, and almost everybody raised their hand. And he said, before that, how many people knew that Jim Swanson had stormed the beach on Utah Beach on D-Day in Normandy? And about 5 people raised their hand. And standing ovation in the middle of church. And you think to yourself, that's why I do those stories, to bring recognition to these seemingly ordinary people who have done extraordinary things that I couldn't imagine doing. So I loved it. We did World War II, Korea, Vietnam, on down through, and you know, since I'm from a military family, all that was really meaningful to me.
Thanks for doing that.
Oh,
Yeah. You know, my dad was is a World War II veteran, and he was in a different situation, and he will tell you that he defended the Gulf of Mexico from foreign invasion. He was, and I'll have to have him tell you some of those stories, but he still went. If they hadn't dropped the bomb, he would have gone over and was getting ready to go. And I don't think people realize how much of a treasure our armed forces are for us. And I thank you for doing that. And I mean, you love the military, obviously from an early age, but those are awesome. Do you continue to do them now at all, or because you retired, you don't do those anymore?
No, I haven't done those anymore, but you know, one of the offshoots was those stories helped lead to those flights of honor where we were flying those World War II vets up to Washington, and those were some of the best days of my life, going up there with them.
So I took my dad to the Mighty or the Great 8 Museum down near Savannah, and you know, so it's like he walks in and he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah." I'm like, "Well, where were you at, Dad?" "Well, I was here." You know, I guess I think he was an engineer. So it was the guy that flew, and then my dad was like the Top Gunner engineer or something like that. And then Little Joe was the one that went into the back. And I'm like, "Little Joe? Well, you have to be small. Get back there, Johnny." And then it's like, "Oh." He goes, and I'm like, "He sat in there?" And, you know, it's just this little turret. And I said, and he's like, "Yeah, so you know he got warm, he kept warm, don't you?" I'm like, "How's that, Dad?" He goes, "Oh, he'd fire a couple rounds off, shells roll up underneath him." And I mean, it's just those stories and things like that. And then, you know, you see, do you know Don Timmons?
Yes.
All right,
yeah,
so
very
Don's
well.
doing what he's doing. And of course, obviously that's slowed down with COVID. But, you know, Dad's been to a couple of those. The Childress family had them all down too. They were in the, this was pre-COVID, they had them in that.
I was there for that.
Yep, huge thing.
Down at RCR.
Yep, at RCR. And so I appreciate what you've done for our military, because I think it's very, very important that people realize the sacrifices that the person that is coming back now from overseas has given to the persons that you know did World War II.
Well, and it was particularly important for me for the Vietnam veterans, because I grew up in a neighborhood where everybody's dad or their eldest son was in Vietnam, and they never got the recognition they deserved. And so to do those stories and to do the Vietnam homecoming down in Charlotte and make a big deal out of it, that was really important to me.
Well, let's take another break.
All right.
We'll come back, and then we got to talk about a little bit more about you. But thanks for doing that for the veterans. That's cool. We'll be right back with more Camel Sleep Chat. Welcome back to Camel Sleep Chat. I'm John McPherson, and I'm here with Cameron Kent, retired. No, you're not retired, and we'll talk about that.
I want to parenthesis afterwards.
Yeah, retired. I want to go back. You know, I want to talk about giving back, but yeah, let's just do that. All right. So I remember every time that we did anything in the JCs or any charity or anything, it's like, "Hey, Cameron, it's John McPherson. Could you please call me? Here's my home phone number," because, you know, we didn't have cells. We're wanting to see if you would MC this or do that. So I know Lainey does a lot with Alzheimer's. I mean, I've walked in the Alzheimer's walk, and she does a lot of other charities. But I walked behind her in the Alzheimer's walk and had a chance to talk to her. But you've been involved in a lot of charities. So I know that you're involved in one now, but you're getting ready to be involved in another. So what are some of the charities around town that you've worked with?
Well, the ones I probably worked with primarily, Samaritan Ministries, did a lot for them, you know, with their penny campaign for a long time.
Oh gosh, remember over at Thruway, the penny campaign?
Yeah. Oh yeah, those were great days, and you know, and spent a lot of time, you know, down at the Samaritan Inn, just getting to know the guests there and serving meals, and that was important. Habitat for Humanity is one of my big loves. I got involved in that just going out and building houses, and then from that point forward, served on the board and emceed a lot of their events and did some other media things for them. And
Sylvia.
Yeah, Sylvia Oberly is fantastic.
Phenomenal.
What a great heart, what a great spirit. And I just love that organization because it is just lifting people up. It is, I've just seen it change lives. Same with Samaritan Ministries. I've seen the men in that Cornerstone Project. Their lives just change from being addicts to being productive people who go back out and they're husbands and their fathers, and they have jobs, and it's just life-changing.
Very teach me to fish organizations.
Very much so. It's not a handout. It is a hand up, and it just Habitat changes lives for generations because home ownership leads to kids doing better in school and going on to college, and just changes things for generations.
Hold on one second. So owning a home is important. Call me or his wife. Yeah, go ahead.
That's true. Mortgage rates are low, folks.
Mortgage rates
Call
are low.
now.
Inventory's low. Call John. Call Sue. All right. And you make sure you tell her I said her name too every time, okay?
And the food bank, providing food, especially to kids, because if you're hungry, you can't do anything else. It is awful to be hungry. And you can't go to school, you don't feel like working if you don't have food in your stomach. So those things, those organizations that provided basic needs of food and shelter and clothing, I think changed the landscape of this town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I told you I met you at I saw you at a Distinguished Service Awards or something that you did for the JCs. You were, you were on the circuit of being the MC.
Well, one of my great role models was Gene Overby, the late great Gene Overby.
My gosh.
Gene.
And his son Jello.
Yeah.
Scott.
He was just, he just took advantage of the platform that he had as a sportscaster at WXII, and then as the voice of the Deeks and WSJS Radio.
Right.
And Gene told me once, I try to never say no, because it's my way of giving back. Because the community gives us so much. Yeah. Just tuning in, that's a big gift. And so it's just my way of using this resource and this platform that I have to give back and lift everybody.
So I messed up. Gene's son's Gene Jr. You know who I was thinking of also, too, when I said Jello? That's Glenn Scott's son.
Oh.
Another great person.
Oh, he's
So I mean, you
two guys on the Mount Rushmore of local broadcasters.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And lucky enough to know both of them as a young man and to learn a lot. And I mean, Gene was just such a great mentor. Just took me under his wing.
It was sad when we lost Gene. I Facebook messaged Glenn probably about a month ago.
Yeah.
So he's a good guy too. Yeah. And you are right. We've had some really, really good people here. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm glad you took me back to media because, and by the way, you do know that I'm medicated for ADD, and I did take it today, but I know I'm jumping all over the place. This was my question that I had earlier today coming in, and that is, how has, I know you're going to tell me this is why you love being retired, social media affected journalism? I want to get your thoughts on social media and journalism because that is a huge thing now. I know that you have your @CameronKentNC Twitter account, but we waited till 6 o'clock to find out why there was, a fire in, a garbage truck caught on fire 2 days ago at Joni Moser Park. There was a fire as a recycle thing, and they dumped it out in the parking lot. My friend has a picture of it, because they were down there, and I don't even know if they even got reported on. But we waited to hear at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Or maybe we got a news break in the Sentinel, if you remember that, the journal.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Twin City Sentinel.
Yeah. So how do you think, and I'm knowing your professionalism and your honor, I'm sure that some of that stuff drives you nuts in some way, shape, or form. So I will stop.
Well, I'll start at the beginning and say that when I started, we had the the
Back
6
when I
o'clock
was a
news,
kid.
that's kind of, yeah. Car was a
40
quarter.
years ago.
That's kind of
Bless
what
your
it sounds
spirit.
like. But we had the 6 o'clock news and the 11 o'clock
Right.
news. And then, we just kept adding and everybody kept adding.
Then it was, who was it? It was somebody, it was a Greensboro that went, we'll do the 5 o'clock news. It's like, dang it, now I got to come in and do a 5 and a
yeah,
6
he
o'clock.
started doing the 5,
Yeah.
and we didn't do any news on Sunday.
Right.
We didn't have a morning show, and so they just kept adding and adding and adding news. And then cable TV came along, and so all of a sudden you've got a proliferation of...
Was it TNN, right? Turner News Network or something at that point? Yeah.
Yeah, and CNN was the first to launch it, but now you've got, all these different news outlets 24/7. That's a big, hungry machine to feed. And so the lines start to get blurred between information and opinion, and that's a problem for somebody who considers himself a journalist. Then social media explodes, and now you've got this battle between information and disinformation, and trying to sort out, what's fact, what's rumor, what's sheer falsehood. That eats up a lot of energy for news people. And so you just hope that people will get their information from several different sources and sort of compare, well, why did this person say that and this person said just the opposite? Both can't be right. And so, again, that's why I felt this tremendous responsibility to go on the air every night and say, this is, I've looked at this from all the angles, and this is what they're saying, this is what they're saying, and this is what I think happened, and I'm going to let you decide.
And the other thing that happens in this is, what is it? Superman says that with power comes great responsibility. With that information becomes great responsibility. If you saw something happen, it's not your responsibility always to put it out there. It's, and I think that has hurt us with shootings, fights, whatever. You don't always need to put that stuff out there.
Well, you don't. More than once there were bomb threats.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you report on that, especially if it's affecting traffic or if it's evacuation of a building? You want to be very careful. You could go on the air and, sensationalize it and scare everybody to death, or you can take a very measured approach and say, there's an incident going on downtown, it's affecting traffic, these streets have been shut down, and you might want to go a different way because, very often...
Waiting for the police to fill us in with more information.
Right.
And then it's like, there's a bomb threat downtown, it was no big deal, it's over with.
Yeah, and maybe you don't even tell them that, because most of the time, it was a false alarm. So if people had any idea how carefully, at least at WXII, they measure out what they're going to say and how they're going to say it, I think they'd be really impressed.
It shook through a strainer.
And very much so. And then how much equal time is given to both sides, down to the second, particularly in political coverage. If this guy spoke for 30 seconds, then the guy on the other end of the aisle is going to speak for 30 seconds, or as close as we can get it to it. And I would challenge people, say, tape the news, and you just take a stopwatch, see how much time we devoted to this side, how much time we devoted to that side. You'll find out it's within a couple of seconds. And sure enough, it was. We worked very hard not to sensationalize things and to make sure we got it right, because there's this race to get it on first. And, gosh, you remember the Sago mining disaster, where they had a bunch of miners trapped in West Virginia, and they went on the air and say, oh, everybody's fine, everybody escaped, and a couple hours later, oh, actually, no, that didn't happen. There was only one survivor. And that's a huge disservice because you didn't vet the information, and you rushed it on the air, and you speed one over accuracy, and that should never happen.
Right. Were you ever concerned about your safety?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Got death threats.
Yeah.
Got legitimate death threats. Police escorts home every once in a while. Didn't tell anybody, but hats off to the Winston-Salem Police Department.
I've had other guests on that have been told not to go home for a couple days, stuff, because you never, you don't know. And that location was so, because you had a bus stop there for the K&W, right? And so if I didn't have a car and I had an issue, I could get over that way. Or if I did have a car, I'd drive where. But very secure. But I do remember several times of like I was doing something and with XI for some, whatever we were working on, and I do remember there were time periods where it got scary. Obviously, the one with the general manager getting shot.
Well, and you think about it, an incident happens where danger's involved, everybody else is running away, and you are running toward it. And so you thrust yourself into some dangerous situations, and you just have to use your instincts and your experience to say, are we in a good place here, or do we need to, run for cover? So,
all right, it's time.
uh-oh.
So let's talk about your experiences. Your experiences have led you to deflate the balloon every day now. So what is going on? You write every day? I mean, so take me back. Make Me Disappear was your first book that you wrote. We sold it at K&S News.
Yes, you did. I remember that.
We interviewed. I think you came whenever you were around. You went. Cameron was nice enough to go around to all the locations and sign it. And I think we put it up on the front as a staff pick bestseller. But Make Me Disappear was your first book. What's that about, or what got you started?
That's a young adult novel. It's for kids like 8 to 13, really a middle grade novel. It's about the land where things go when they disappear. And it came to me in a dream the night before my wedding, and I was staying down at the Brookstown Inn, and I came down to breakfast. My mom and dad were there, and my aunt and uncle, and I said I had the weirdest dream about where things go when they disappear. So like when a magician makes a tiger vanish, where did the tiger go in the meantime until he brought it back?
Dang sunglasses I lost.
Exactly. Yeah. If you put 20 socks in the dryer and only 19 come back, where'd it go?
19, you're doing good.
So this explains, where everything goes when it disappears, and it's about a little boy who runs away to the land where things go when they disappear.
Right.
And it was for kids 8 to 13, so I didn't have to look up too many of the words. And then after that, started writing more
How long
adult
did you to write
contemporary. That probably took me 6 months because I wasn't working on it full time. That was just spare time.
Right. And so, for someone that has dreamed of writing a book, and I think I asked you this at the same time, I think this is the second time I've asked you this question, how do you start? Because, obviously you have a journalism background. I want to write something. I don't know what I want to write, obviously, but it's like, do I start writing stories I tell? I just don't, I don't know. So how did you get started knowing, hey, oh my gosh, this is a passion? And put the pencil to the paper?
Well, I started off screenwriting, writing movies, and that really helps you with structure, particularly, figuring out beginnings and middles and ends. And it's sort of a streamlined version of a novel. Everybody's got their own process. I sit down and I write about a 2-page outline. This is how the story begins. This is the conflict in the middle, and this is the resolution. And then I expand that to about a 20-page outline, and then I sit down and just start writing it, just one chapter at a time or one scene at a time, and until I get through the whole thing, and then tons and tons and tons of revisions, and then you start sending it out to publishers.
Right. Yeah. And so, Make Me Disappear. Did you self-publish? You didn't. No, they didn't self-publish at that point. So you got a publisher on that, and then you did a little bit of a tour, I remember, too. You went around to some different places besides us.
Yeah.
Probably went to News and Novels in Greensboro, stuff like that. And then, is it 4 books now that you've written?
5.
5, okay.
5, yeah.
Okay, because, I only had 4 on your website. You better check that. So, because I was going to say you got 4 of those, and then 1 of those. We'll get to that. So, you mentioned how many films have you written? You've been involved in 4 films?
Yeah, I've had 4 films actually produced.
And you've got 1 going now, right?
Well,
or sort of.
Hopefully.
COVID?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, COVID has really hit the film industry
Right.
big time. So a lot of that is on
And not
hold.
having that North Carolina tax thing doesn't help the North Carolina.
Well,
I will give my opinion on that one if somebody wants my opinion.
Incentives would help because a lot of that is
Incentives
going
to
to
the
South
movie
Carolina,
industry.
Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're losing out. And,
Wilmington ain't what it used to be.
Well, and I don't know. I won't comment on it, but I think
Oh,
it would be a good idea.
I'll comment for you. Yeah, no, we can support that. That's not a polarizing thing.
I think it brings jobs, revenue, and prestige to the state. But
You want lower taxes?
yeah,
Get the film industry.
What do I know?
So you've done now. What's help screenwrite, help produce? What all did you do there?
Never produced, just always the screenwriter. It's like you give birth to the baby and someone else raises it for you. But I enjoyed it. I think I have sold or optioned 19 screenplays and had 4 of them made.
All right, hold that. We're going to be right back. We're going to take a break, and we got to talk about this now. We'll be right back with more Camel City Chat. Welcome back to Camel City Chat. I'm John McPherson. I'm getting more frustrated with my guest, Cameron Kent, because not only has he, been a newscaster that we all know, loved, and trust, still love you. Trust you still, too. And know you, okay.
You still know me.
Yeah, still know you. We haven't gotten to the part of, he's run 7 marathons. Woohoo, great, yeah, way to go. I've run 1.
Hey,
it took
no
me
kidding.
all day.
Which one?
I ran Disney, and it took me 7 hours.
Good for you.
7 hours.
Oh,
Yeah, you ran 2 in that time period, probably, or less. We've talked about social media affecting journalism. We've talked about your charity work, veterans. Now let's get into you, which is going to make me just, we've talked about books, films. Do you have any free time?
I work a lot.
What is your day now? So obviously not counting today because we know you came to record Camel City Chat. So tomorrow morning you wake up and what do you do?
Coffee, read the newspaper.
Right. Do whatever Sue says.
Watch it. Well,
pet the dog.
Fortunately, she's a great boss. Sort of catch up on what happened overnight.
Do you watch the news now?
I do. Yeah,
Okay.
I still watch WXII. Love it. Still a big fan.
Right.
Catch up on international news. I watch CNN because
Right.
my daughter works for CNN.
Right, of course, you have to.
I want to know that. And then I'm usually up in the office sitting down to write by 9:30.
Okay.
And I'll just pretty much write all day. I mean, last night I didn't shut it down till 10:15 last night. So it just, I
Are you
work
buying
as much
stuff
as
on
I
Amazon,
can.
or you just really just
No,
writing?
I'm just writing, just writing.
And what are you working on without telling me so that I can steal the story?
Working on another novel. This one takes place on the Isle of Skye in Scotland.
Okay.
Yeah. And,
I would expect that you probably need to take your wife there to do research.
already did. That's why.
Okay, good. All right, just making sure.
Already way ahead of you.
Write that trip off. So you have 4 books, 5 books now. And if I want to learn more about you, obviously, I can follow you at Cameron Kent NC on the Twitter. And
Twitter.
Or I can go to the www. I can go to the World Wide Web and go to CameronKent.com. That's CameronKent.com, and that's got some stuff there.
Right. It's got a thumbnail sketch
right.
of little synopses of all the books.
So I buy a movie I buy the rights from one of your movies or your script from me. Do you participate in the filming? Do you get to go out and see that? Is it here? Is it there?
Yeah, I've done that, yeah.
Yeah.
Gone out to see some of the movies filmed, which is always exciting to see the, actors bring your words to life. That's
So
fun.
which would be the one that people know the most of your work?
Well, they're all TV movies. So Seduced and Betrayed was an NBC Monday night movie of the week.
How cool was that?
Yeah, it was very cool. It was good, fun to go out there and watch that. The Witness Files is I think probably my favorite. Yancey Butler just did a magnificent job.
Okay.
Twist of Fate. There's just and then a bunch that you either option. They buy kind of the idea, or they'll buy the entire script and pay you, and then they can't get the funding to make it, and it just sits there. It's just sitting on a shelf somewhere in Los Angeles.
So is it a shotgun approach for you in the sense of? Because I know, we have the young adult book, or have you narrowed down to a genre that you really are in now?
I haven't really. I just write what I feel like writing, and I always have 3 ideas.
You make me sick, just by the way.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that, buddy.
Whatever I feel like writing. So, I'll write young adult, and then I'll write an adult suspense thriller, and then, the what I'm working on now is, I guess, considered a romantic comedy, and
Right.
just, I don't know, no specific genre, just whatever I want to write. And I do look at the marketplace to see what I think can sell.
Right.
Also.
And do you now then, like when you're writing it, do you go, oh, well, that person should be played by Stabler? I mean, do you have...
I do.
All right, so like J-Lo could be, oh, this would be perfect for her, that type of thing.
Well, I think it helps as a writer in your own mind if you're picturing, okay, Harrison Ford is the guy I sort of picture playing this role, and so you
need his number? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you could take it.
Yeah, he was last episode of the chat. Did you not see it? All right.
No, I could use Jimmy Buffett's number, though.
All right.
you know, that helps, I think, in your own mind sort of picture what this guy looks like and how he walks and talks and all those things. I think that helps bring your characters to life. So I'm always envisioning somebody, usually famous. Sometimes it's just an acquaintance, and this is kind of the body that this character is going to fit into for this story.
All right, so you mentioned music. We have not talked ahead of time about my questions, and it's so cool that you've segued me and made me look like I'm smart. So you mentioned music. Obviously, you know, if you have Jimmy Buffett's cell phone number, call Cameron. But you wrote a freaking musical too. You're killing me. Did you write the words to the music and also
I did.
and also scored it and everything?
I did. I wrote all the music. I think there's 11 original songs.
If you weren't blocking me from the door, I'd get up and leave. I'm done. Okay? So you wrote a Christmas musical.
I did. Welcome to Virginia.
All right.
Very proud of it.
All right.
Good, clean family entertainment.
Well, I mean, Virginia's for lovers. It's the Commonwealth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's funny. I started off writing this play, and it was the first project I undertook after I retired.
Right.
And because I'd had this idea in my head, and so I started writing this play, and then I thought, gosh, this would lend itself to a musical. So I started writing, you know, a couple songs. And
because, right here on this, you play the guitar too. Yeah, great.
I do. You know, it's just average. But so I just started, you know, putting these songs together and got it all together. And I took it down to Jamie Lawson at Theater Alliance.
Yeah.
And I said, would you just read this for me? Because I've never written a play
Great
before.
guy. Jamie's a great guy.
And he calls me up 3 days later and goes, we would like to do your play. And I'm like, I'm not ready for that. And so the next 6 months was spent, you know, putting together, recording all the music, doing the teaching tracks, getting it scored. A guy named David Lane did an amazing job. And then some other folks around town helped me record the music and hired some friends to do the singing for the teaching tracks. And then you turn it over to them, and they did a phenomenal job. To watch it come to life on stage just was mind-blowing.
So, all right. So, James, now were you in the old location, which was right above like Big Bob's or whatever that was?
Right.
Is where it was?
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. Their new place is a palace.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
They put their time in to get that.
Yeah.
They deserve
Yeah,
every
they did.
cent of that one.
It's beautiful. But you know, this was the old one there on Northwest Boulevard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, Monday night movie of the week, kids may be there, some friends over, you probably sitting there and going, hey, this is pretty cool. What is it like to be in the theater opening night of the freaking play that you wrote with, I know, like everyone from WXII had to get tickets and all that kind of stuff. And
Well,
I mean, how cool was that?
I was thinking if this thing bombs, I'm going to have to move. I really was. So
Well, did you produce it so it could be like the producer? So, you know, if it bombs and you make all the money? Yeah, buy the insurance from Lawrence?
No, I did. Yeah. I had nothing on the back end.
Oh, my gosh.
And I sat in the back row, and I was wearing glasses, and I was sort of slumped down in my seat and just couldn't wait for the lights to go dark. And then
I remember it was great.
The first scene, first line, people started laughing.
Yeah.
And you're like, I think this is going to be okay. And then at the end, you know, standing ovation. And after that, you felt a whole lot better about everything.
I remember when it came out because they did a lot of press and everything on it. I didn't get to see it, but I remember when it came out, and I remember how, I mean, everyone was like, can you believe he did this too? I mean, you know, you've lived a pretty good life.
I have been very lucky.
Yeah, so that's going to come to the next question after this one. But because I want to hear about what you want to be remembered for, and I said this isn't a demise; it can be whatever. I guess we might as well go ahead and touch on the last thing. You better tell me you like fishing if you get away to the lake.
I do. I like to fish.
Okay.
I'm not like a big giant, you know, bass boat, deep sea fisherman. I like to sit on the dock at sunset with some
listening
night
to
crawlers,
Jimmy Buffett, night crawlers, and maybe a libation.
Right. Yeah. And just sit there and cast off the dock and catch whatever I can catch. I do. I love to fish. I'm a big outdoors person. I would just like to be outdoors.
Do you fly fish ever?
I used to fly fish a lot, and I do some occasionally.
I'll send you a text next time
up in the
we're
mountains, but I just, that is a skill that I feel like I'm
I'm horrible at it. I just like standing out there and my phone doesn't ring.
I just like putting on all the stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. All right, so 3 things before we go. One, you mentioned it early on, and I didn't jump on you about it. I wanted to get it towards the end here. You have a faith in God. You go to church. Tell me how that has guided you through your life, or how how it's affected the way that you've approached stories, because I think that's real important that when you do have a faith, people understand it.
Well, I do. I go to church every Sunday. I mean, COVID's put a damper on that, but yeah, I've been going to the same church here for 26 years. Grew up in a church. I think a couple of things. You're surrounded by really good people doing really good things in the community, so there's wonderful role models for you. People just looking for ways to help other people, and that's important. I think when really bad news happens, everybody's tumbling a little bit, and you have to have a foundation. You have to have someplace to land, and your faith really helps you with that. And then I also think it helps with empathy and sympathy, because you go to a lot of places and you're going to see people on their worst day. Either their house is burned down, or it's been blown away in a tornado, or flooded by a hurricane or something like that. And you have to remember you are a person and they're a person, and it's just not a story, because it's going to live with them the rest of their lives. And you have to always remember that, and just be very empathetic about that. You go interview somebody whose son has been killed in a war, and
you go home and hug yours. I mean,
you do,
it's
and
hard.
I mean, your faith gets you through that. So I think it's just a big part of my life.
Good.
Yeah.
So we'll take you out of the that one, because I know that, I mean, I could tell you were getting like, this is, it is important. How do I answer this? I tell the story too many times, so I'll just say this. When you and I came to Winston, I moved here in 1979, 77. So when you and I came to Winston, you didn't go downtown.
No.
Thank goodness that your studio was on Coliseum, right? You didn't go downtown. And it's changed a little bit since then.
A little bit.
Yeah. What's it like the kids come to town or whatever, and you go out with mom, and you're downtown having a cocktail at Trophy Room or whatever. You go to we can go in the Reynolds Building and actually eat. It's like you couldn't even get in the front door. So how do you like the changes in Winston, and what would you like to see?
Well, I love bringing friends of mine who haven't been here in years downtown. Or my kids have been away, and then I take them down and I show them what's going on at Bailey Park,
Right.
or what's going on Trade Street or 4th Street, and they're like,
or Wanda Michelle's Park, and where they're putting what is it, Caladium or whatever now. I mean, just all this stuff's going on.
And my daughter said, Winston-Salem is cool. I said, yes, it
Move back
is.
home.
There's so much to do. The music scene, I think, is a big part of that, but there's just so many great restaurants and just so many places to go, and it's alive. I mean, you go to the corner of 4th and Cherry and Marshall on a Friday or Saturday night, it's teeming with people in the summer. I love it. I'm very proud of it. I think they've done a magnificent job of repurposing old buildings, these beautiful old warehouses, or where like Fiddlin' Fish is, these beautiful brickwork.
Yeah, how about the Indigo Inn?
Wow. And the Kimpton and Wiseman and Incendiary. I mean, these places where they took places that had just sort of gone fallow, and they figured out how to turn them into really cool spaces, beautiful spaces. So we've done a magnificent job of doing that. I just really proud of that. We haven't expanded kind of like Charlotte. I don't want to live in a city that's just a bunch of freeways.
Right.
I think we've done a good job of taking what we already had and repurposing it and making it better and attracting more people to downtown.
Isn't it interesting? I find that Charlotte wants to be Atlanta, and I find like Greensboro wants to be Charlotte. And obviously we want to be bigger too, and I don't know where we want to go on that stuff. But I mean, you've been there when they took the tracks out of downtown. Then they were talking about putting the tracks back in around downtown for the trolley cars, and then they got rid of the trolley cars. And it's like, there's just so many cool things about Winston. When you said Incendiary, I'm like, how many people have taken that picture looking down those stairs into Incendiary Cugino Forno to get the tracks, and all that kind of stuff.
It's amazing. I feel like I've had really good leadership in our town, and I think that's helped. And we have a lot of just benevolent people who have taken their skill set and applied it, to all these different organizations or these entrepreneurial projects, and that have just lifted up all of us. So I'm,
Yeah, I mean, how many
I'm
times
really
you-
proud to be here.
Yeah. How many times do you have the mayor's cell phone number? All of us, I mean, I think everyone has the mayor's cell phone number here. He's been a good mayor for us.
You see him everywhere.
Yeah. All right, let's wind this up, sir, because you have wasted your day with us. I'm very appreciative of you being here, and you keep telling me thank you, but no, I mean, you are someone that I feel very lucky to have met early in my Winston-Salem life. You've always been someone that if I have needed something, we were doing something and I call and say, hey, we're going to have Spider-Man. Minnie Pearl we had at WXII. I don't know if you were there then because it was during the daytime because you aren't up that early. But we had, I was with Minnie Pearl. We had Playboy Playmate of the Year, Donna Edmondson. We had all the, and we would come over and you guys would always give us some time and stuff like that. Or KNS News was having Spider-Man. But you've always been kind, and as you said, Gene said, give back or whatever. I want to say thank you publicly to thank you because I think that you have been a influence to a lot of us out there. Okay.
Well, you're kind to say that.
What do you want to be remembered for? When you signed off that last time, and I'm talking to you, you can do it wherever you want to do it, sir.
Well, I mean, professionally, I want to be remembered as somebody who did their best to present an unbiased view of the world every night. Mm-hmm. That was important to me. But so much more important to me is I want to be remembered as somebody who gave back to their community in any way that I knew how to. Mm-hmm. That, I was involved in organizations that I tried to support as many places as I could. I tried to never say no. If you needed a judge for your elementary school talent show, call me.
WXII is Cameron Kent.
I'm your guy. I mean, as somebody who just gave back, who just, who I had so many great role models of people who I could look to and say, this is how you do it. This is how you get involved. You do it quietly. You don't do it for the wrong reasons. You do it just because it's going to help somebody down the road. And I think that's what I want to give back. I grew up in a household where the mantra was, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I've always tried to live that way. Mm.
Well, what I will tell you is that we are, I believe, 9 years in difference. And you were someone that I've always looked up to as when I was, a teenager. You did provide us with the news, and you did it, I don't want to say fair and balanced because then that's somebody I think is some other station, but you did it fairly and you balanced it and gave the news and not the opinion. But you have, as I've said before, you've always been so kind to me. It was really funny because like somebody'd say something, I go, well, you guys want me to call Cameron? And I would call and ask, and you'd say, John, I can't do it. Why don't you call so-and-so, or I can do it. And thanks, really, honestly. I mean, I don't know how to tell you other than, when I did book talk or when, you're someone that people look up to in our community, and I appreciate you being you.
Well, thank you for saying that.
And thanks for doing this.
This community has been really good to me, so I'm just happy to be a resident.
Mm-hmm. Well, we appreciate you being here. Thanks for
John.
doing Camel City Chat. Everybody, we will be back next week with more Camel City Chat. And behind, it's always about the cameraman, right? Behind, did you see him mouth a word? He mouthed Smitty. We got to say thanks to Jeff Smith, which I was going to do anyway, but I got to give Stabler credit so that everyone knows. Don't forget Smitty's notes. Remember when that came out? That was huge.
I worked with Smitty's dad, Hugh Smith, for a long time.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sure did. Yeah.
So check out Smitty's notes. Stabler will put the stuff at the end. He sponsors our show and shares all of our episodes as soon as they come out. Want to say thanks again, Cameron Kent, and all the best to you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, you
Thanks
take care,
for
buddy.
being such a good friend for a long time, John.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. We'll be back next week.